they were best friends. Like Siakam's best friend on the team was Chris Boucher. Chris Boucher's best friend on the team was Pascal Siakam. They're not American, right? So there's different cliques in the NBA. And they were very, very tight. So Chris Boucher, I got rattled seeing Chris Boucher and thinking about the memories. But Raptors responded.
SportsRage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
One that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
This is SportsRage. I am Morency. 34-31 right now in the Pacific Northwest. Pascal Siakam makes his Pacer debut tonight. The Blazers are up right now. They were getting 8.5 on their home court as well. Pretty big number. Halliburton return this evening, so there was a lot of hype about this game. We jumped in on the in-game over. What do I got here? I got over 247.5, and I got Pascal Siakam over 20.5 points as well.
Nice.
So we were talking about the Houston Texans game, and I agree with Joe Madden's assessment. And all kidding aside, I did a video already in which I opened up with the fact that I like the Texans in the first half. Getting 6.5 is a lot of points. It's not easy to be up by 7 points in a half in an NFL football game. I also I like the Texans plus the 3 in the first quarter, and we talked about it. The Ravens have been off for a couple of weeks, and they didn't play their starters. And they played some of them, but they didn't play a lot of starters in the last regular season game. You add it up, we're talking about it's 20 days. You know, it's basically 3 weeks since the Ravens have played a real game, and we're sort of like, it's okay. You know, you're taking a chance. You're going to be able to flick that switch on. Houston have been battling to get into the playoffs. They've been battling for a wild card. They were battling for the division. This is just sort of a carryover right now. I do expect Baltimore to start off a little slow. Let's bring in a man in the area right now. Steve Merrill joins us from Virginia. Always a pleasure, Steve. How you doing tonight? Thanks for joining us, buddy.
Yeah, guys, I was right below the snow cutoff line. It was like right above Richmond all day, and Baltimore got hit pretty hard. We got nothing in Southern Virginia. But weather's going to be clear tomorrow. No precipitation, no wind, but it will be cold. It'll be very cold, and you do have to wonder if that wears Houston down as the game goes on. But I don't disagree with you, Gabe. If you're going to look at Houston, I think early in the game is when you want to do so, because I do think it eventually gets away from them.
So you think the Baltimore Ravens – the Ravens have underachieved in past playoffs. It does feel a little bit different this year. But, guys, I'll be honest. I think that Baltimore survived, but I think the number's a little high. Like, I keep coming back to Baltimore winning this game like 27-21 or something like that. It's just, it seems a little high, Steve. That back door is going to be swinging wide open at 9.5. And the total's so light, Steve. Like, that's what I want to ask you. So, like, you know what I mean? You're getting 9. Like, look at the Niner game. Okay, it's 9.5, but it's higher. San Francisco could easily win that game 41-24. It wouldn't surprise me. This one was 43.5, Steve, and you're getting 10, 9.5. You get where I'm going with this? Where's the wiggle room? Like, to me, that almost tells me I got a live dog, Steve.
Well, it also tells you have the best defense in the NFL. You know, Cleveland, by some metrics, were considered the best D in the NFL last week. I think Houston exposed the fact they weren't. But Baltimore does have the best pass defense in the NFL. So I think that's one thing that's kept the total a little bit lower, because some people think Houston might struggle to score. Also, you got an indoor dome team going outdoor in the cold weather. So I think that's why the total's a little bit lower. But it's eerie how similar the two games are tomorrow on Saturday, Gabe. You have both number one seeds. As you said, both didn't have to play their starters, so they've been basically off for 3 weeks. And they're both 9.5-point favorites, right under that key number of 10. What I do like tomorrow is teasing both favorites down to 2.5 on a 7-point teaser. If you're going to do a 7-point teaser, you got to make those 7 points count because you're laying a lot of extra juice. But getting both 9.5s down to 2.5s, putting them both in straight-up win situations looks pretty strong. And teams that win straight up as a dog in the wild card round are just 21% straight up in the divisional round over the past decade. So I think Baltimore and San Fran both win. Getting them down to 2.5 is pretty appealing.
I brought it up, Steve. Yeah, 13-50 straight up, 25-38 against the spread. Teams that win in the wild card round the following week. One thing I'll say about Houston, guys, and the weather, I don't think it'll be that bad. And number two, where did CJ Stroud's a rookie? Where did he just play the last 2 years?
Right.
In the Big Ten, Ohio State. Who's the Houston Texans' number one wide receiver and offensive playmaker? Nico Collins. He's a Michigan Wolverine. He's a Michigan Wolverine, right? You've got like players that, I don't think it's going to phase them. Really, I don't think the weather will really be a big factor. Devin Singletary, another one, the running back. Talking about a guy who was just on the Buffalo Bills for the last 4 or 5 years or whatnot, right? So I think they might be a little bit immune to it. But I was wrong. Listen, the Dolphins just got paralyzed by it last week. Out of the both dogs, Steve, which one do you think is a more live dog, the Packers or the Texans?
Packers, actually, just because we saw how explosive they were last week. Obviously, the Texans look great offensively. Both young quarterbacks look good. And I think San Fran is a solid team. But, you mentioned something earlier, Gabe, about how the Ravens have underachieved, and Cam mentioned it also. And you guys are exactly right. They've lost their first playoff game 3 of the last 4 times. But for that reason, I actually kind of like Baltimore more this week. I just don't think they're going to let it happen again. And the other thing I'll say, too, is the Packers, maybe they've overachieved, but you could definitely say Houston's overachieved. You just kind of feel like maybe they've gotten all they're going to get at this point, and the Ravens are going to finally play a good playoff game.
You know what, Gabe? I really like your take on the early Houston to come out and maybe, get some points. But I'm with Steve. Like, I almost equate this as a fight. And, Gabe, you've talked about this many times before. You got to hit the canvas before you become the champ. And I think Baltimore knows all the disappointments, losing to Tennessee outright and whatever. They've been waiting for this stuff. They will be prepared and ready. That's why I'm laying the 9.5 points. I think I think Houston's going to come out and give them a nice opening punch. But I'm with Steve. I think as the game progresses, I think the Ravens win this game by 16. I think they're just a better team. They're at home, and they know they got to take care of business. I like the Ravens a lot.
They're both pretty. They've both been profitable in the situations and roles that they're in. The Houston Texans have been an underdog 10 times this year. They're 7-3 ATS. And that's a nice 70% clip right there. The Baltimore Ravens have been a favorite 14 times this year, 9-5 ATS, which is a pretty impressive number when laying chalk right there. Man, it's an intriguing football game. Like I said, Baltimore's a dangerous football team, but they've got demons to slay. And I look forward to seeing how if Houston can play outdoors in this weather, which I think they can. Weather won't be a factor in the Bay Area game. I love the over, Steve, of the Saturday night game. Because I think, listen, man, you look at Green Bay, they played well last week. They also gave up 32 points to the Dallas Cowboys. I get it that they had a lead and stuff, but they still gave up 30+. They gave up 30 points to the Carolina Panthers a couple of weeks ago, right? Right. Green Bay's defense, they're not terrible. They make plays when they have to and stuff, but you're dealing with literally the best offense in the National Football League right now in San Francisco. So I know San Francisco are going to get 30, 35, 38 in this game. The question is, how many can Green Bay put up, right? But I think the game goes over.
Yeah, what's crazy is Dallas had over 500 yards of total offense last week. And like you said, you and I both know garbage time, points, and yardage, but they still got outgained by 90 yards in that game, which is crazy. They actually got outgained in that Carolina game you referenced a few weeks ago, but also, once again, a lot of backdoor garbage time. They were up bigger than the 33-30 final, but they still give up yards. And, yeah, San Francisco, another team I think that has a chip on their shoulder. Purdy gets hurt early in the Eagle game last year, and they maybe feel like that was their Super Bowl to win last year. I think they come focused, but they have been off for a while. They haven't had a meaningful game since New Year's Eve when they beat not my Washington Commanders to clinch the number 1 seed. The Baltimore game before that, a little bit of a misleading 14-point loss because they had 5 turnovers to none. And by the way, real quick on that Houston game, Texans have had no turnovers in 6 of their last 8 games. Just get a feeling on the road, rookie quarterback cold against the number 1 defense. That might change as well tomorrow. Another factor for Baltimore. But, yeah, I like the over here as well, Gabe. And it's holding steady on that 50.5, which I don't think will hold by kickoff tomorrow night. 51, a very key number, and the public looks right there on the over as well.
The money's coming in on the over of the Detroit game, though. That's up to 50 right now.
Correct.
Well, like it was 48.5 earlier in the week, right? If my memory serves me correctly.
Yeah, great. It was 49 today. When I bet it, it was 49 to 49.5. 50. I know. It's crazy.
Yeah, and 49 is a dead number. 50 is a dead number. So like you said, 48.5 to 50 really is not much of a move. 50.5 to 51 is a bigger move than all of that because about a 3 to 4% chance games land on 51. 31,
so that's why you got to take that Niner game now because it's a 50.5.
I totally agree. And I'll tell you what else you need to do. If you like the Niners, you play the 9.5 because as of Friday afternoon, 2 or 3 prominent books have gone to -10. Even though the public is on the Packers, so a little bit of a sharp square divide there. But if you like Green Bay, you can get 10s. If you like San Fran, I'd play the 9.5 while it's still available. Baltimore's been holding 9.5. The public is heavy on the Texans. That's actually the most public play of the week, and it's an underdog. So I don't think that's going to get to the key number of 10. And one other thing I want to point out in the Green Bay game, Packers, I believe, elected to receive last week, correct? San Fran will definitely defer. So Green Bay to score first, maybe first quarter, even some of those props might have a little bit of value just because I think the Packers are going to receive. It's almost like a 95%.
Great point you bring up, Gabe. I did a show with this guy. My buddy bets it to the max, Gabe. I don't know if they circle it. I think 500 is the most you can put on it. But San Fran, the same thing. He tells me every single time if they win, they defer. And Green Bay wants the ball, and they scored against Dallas and punched them in the face like they did last game. So I think that's a really good bet if you can find it. Great call, Steve. My buddy was talking to me about this bet too. He smashed it last time, and he says San Fran always defers. So good call.
So the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Lions, the Bucs are another team that have been a great underdog, Steve, and a great ATS team this year. People talk about Baker Mayfield all the time negatively. People talk about Todd Bowles all the time negatively. Wow, they're 12-6 against the spread this year right now. 66% clip here, right? And they're a live dog. I saw another stat the other day. Baker Mayfield's 9-3, guys. The last 12 times is an underdog in a football game. The Lions have this thing about them right now where it's like there's a Michigan thing going on, right? Michigan wins, the Lions won, the Pistons won, the Red Wings kept winning games for a couple of days there. There was some sort of magic, and you sort of get the feeling the ride's not done yet, but they didn't cover last week, Steve, against the Rams. They were laying 3, and they didn't cover the number. Now you're asking them to win by 7 to get there cleanly. I'm not buying in that they can, actually. I get the feeling Detroit survived, but Tampa covers the number.
Yeah, and don't forget last week, if I'm not mistaken, they were outgained by almost 100 total yards in that game against the Rams.
The Rams
as well.
were a far better team, bro. The Rams.
Yeah, and I had the best bet on the Rams, and I never really was worrying about it. When it was a 4-point game, I was like, this will be a bad beat, but then they got it to 1. Thing is, though, I think Tampa's not any better. And yes, they're playing good football, but they just beat an Eagles team that's in total disarray. So the question becomes, is Tampa really that much better the last couple months? Is Mayfield really that much better the last couple months? Because keep in mind, these teams played back, it was week 6, but it was the 5th game, or actually week 7, the 6th game for Tampa because they were coming off their bye week at home, great setup, and they got manhandled by Detroit 20-6, outgained over yards. That was the beginning of a 1-6 slide, and then they finished now on a 6-1 straight-up run. So really the tale of 2 seasons. I do like Detroit here. My concern with Detroit, though, is their pass defense. That's their weakness. Their strength is their run defense. Tampa Bay's had the worst rushing attack the last 2 years in the NFL. They have to throw the ball. So I like Detroit, but I think you could definitely hedge it with the over. So I do agree with that over as well. And as long as it stays 50.5 or lower, I still think there's value with the over.
Steve, we got about 35 seconds here. What about the Bills and Chiefs?
That's the hard for me. Pacheco over 61.5 rushing yards. Actually, a video I put out today because the side in total I think is a tough call. But Buffalo's weakness has been their run D. They've got more injuries now on defense. Cold weather game. And Kansas City's not throwing the ball great this year. So I think Pacheco over 61.5 yards makes sense on the ground.
Steve Merrill, wagertalk.com. Always a pleasure, Steve. Thanks for stepping up and in.
Yeah, boys, thank you.
We'll catch up with you next week.
C.J. Stroud looked like he's been playing in the league for a decade as the former number one overall pick.
Give me the 9.5 outright. Plus 385 outright. We smashed the 49.
The Tampa stuff just doesn't feel repeatable.
I've always thought that Baker Mayfield was better than people give him credit for.
Make sure you are locked in.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Last year, the Purdue Boilermakers upset by the 16 seed Fairleigh Dickinson. Is history going to repeat itself?
Purdue is capable of winning 6 games in the NCAA tournament, but the fact is, until Purdue proves that it's capable of not just advancing, but advancing far in the bracket in March, this is going to be the storyline. And I've said that to you throughout the offseason.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
They were best friends. Like Siakam's best friend on the team was Chris Boucher. Chris Boucher's best friend on the team was Pascal Siakam. They're not American, right? So there's different cliques in the NBA, and they were very, very tight. So Chris Boucher, I got rattled seeing Chris Boucher and thinking about the memories. But Raptors responded.
SportsRage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
One that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
We've got a big day of sports tomorrow. Massive. We've got a bunch of college basketball as well. Tony Finn will join us. Rob Vina, we'll see if Rob's got his eye on anything on the college hardwood. Obviously, the National Football League kicks off at 4:30 Eastern time. I briefly brought it up earlier, though. You know what? I always used to laugh about this because I was about to say once a year they have this deal where they call it Hockey Day in Canada, but every day is Hockey Day in Canada. So, I don't know what's special about this day, to be honest. This is special. It's like, dude, you have games on every day, all day. I don't know what you're talking about on Saturdays. But basically, in Canada, it's Hockey Day in Canada. All the Canadian teams play all day long on TV. And they visit, small towns where players are from. And this is where this guy played in front of, 12 people in a town of 20 or whatever. And it's hokey, but it's good stuff. Mm-hmm. But what's cool about it, if you're betting on this stuff, is it'll be starting early, 3 o'clock Eastern, Winnipeg at Ottawa. 7 o'clock Eastern. Montreal at Boston, 7 o'clock Eastern. Toronto at Vancouver. We got the Edmonton Oilers and the Calgary Flames in action as well. So we got some big-time games. And speaking of Edmonton, we just had Joe Madden on from Calgary. She said the Flames were going to beat the Oilers tomorrow. And my guitar arrived from an ice-cold Edmonton. But shout out to the Acoustic Guitar Shop in Edmonton, Alberta, who randomly, for whatever reason, was the only guitar store in North America that had the Desert Yellow Ibanez Genesis 550. Mick Aussie personally delivered it himself to the airport. It got to me safely. How you doing, Mick?
That's awesome, mate. And yeah, we got it going on in Edmonton. People diss the city, but things are happening. And what about those Oilers, eh? 12
I'm not going to miss you ever again.
In a row.
Yeah, forget about the Oilers. I'm just, I was going to praise the music store.
Forget the Oilers. They've won 12. Great music shop. Who cares about their 12-game winning streak?
Oilers are rocking.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. They're not losing to the Flames tomorrow. Sorry, Joe.
Yeah.